the motion that stands before the House is, this House believes feminist movements disregard minority women. And I now turn to Laali Vadlamani, I know her well enough, I shouldn't get that wrong. Laali Vadlamani, Trinity College, and the Treasurer to open the case for the proposition. Thank you.
The suffragettes who fought for the right to vote in the 1900s were feminists. The women all around the world who came together to fight against Donald Trump's remarks that Hillary Clinton was such a nasty woman by creating the hashtags #NastyWoman and #NastyWomanUnite were feminists too. And so am I. I had always hesitated in labelling myself a feminist. I'd been told it referred to militant girls who hated boys. I only really started to recognise myself as a feminist once I'd joined university and had been able to move beyond my childish naivety. I realised that the world that we live in is definitely not a fair or equitable one. But I feel let down by what I see around me. The feminism that I was being fed, that so many of us are fed, is a very one-sided view of feminism, and it's something that I just can't support. I was about 4 years old when I started to realise how the circumstances of my birth affected expectations of me as a woman and as a minority. Following Diwali, I came into school the next day with henna patterns on my hands. I was more than happy to explain what the patterns were to my gushing classmates, but then came lunchtime. I ran into my buddy, an older girl in year 3. Once she spotted the patterns on my palms, she immediately told me how pretty she thought they were, but her compliments also came with a warning. She pointed to a particularly nasty boy in her year who was nearby, who was known to be a bit of a bully to girls in particular. She told me to make sure that he didn't spot the patterns, otherwise he'd pick on me and make me cry. I'm not sure why this event stands out for me from my first year at school as one in particular, but I think it's because it marked the start of my irrational fear of my cultural identity. And this struggle is one that most of my peers will never understand. Every child of an ethnic minority probably remembers that awkward moment at primary school when they're asked to draw a portrait of themselves, but the only colour pens made available are peach or black. We learn to laugh it off, but really it's not okay. And as we grow up, we're made to feel as though we need to succumb to white Western beauty standards. And yet this problem extends deeper than merely the colour or aesthetics, whether you're black or white. It's definitely not about how you look, but about the power that underlies who gets to define what looks good or bad, natural or artificial. Whilst young girls with dark skin are made to feel uncomfortable about it by everything they see in the media, and a clear lack of role models who are women of colour, they are surrounded by girls who are all desperate to get a tan, whether that be sitting outside the moment there's a ray of sunshine, rare in this country, I know, or by using fake tan products. It's like everyone feels that we are in fact the golden children, pun intended. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with people who'd like to get a tan, but it seems ironic that beauty standards don't make dark-skinned women feel comfortable, whilst the tanning industry is worth millions. I am tired of white Western feminism. There, I said it. And I am certain that I am not the only one. The notion that feminism is as simple as believing in gender equality is quite frankly a ridiculous one. White Western movements of feminism are heavily recorded and organised, but I have had enough with the way that they centre themselves as speaking for all women and for all women's issues. White feminism fails to give minority women a platform to discuss how other forms of inequality relate to gender inequality. It constantly reminds us that the beauty standard in our culture remains thin, blonde, and white. The reality is that the world and indeed the world that all women live in, is more coloured than white and more poor than middle class and rich. How can feminist movements speak for all women when they do not represent the vast majority of women's lives? But before I go on, it falls upon me to introduce tonight's opposition. Maya Popat is a first-year philosophy and theology student at Pembroke College and is a member of the Union Standing Committee. I have met very few people who are as passionate about the things that they care about as Maya. Whilst organising tonight's debate, we received a somewhat upsetting response from someone we attempted to invite to speak, who claimed that tonight's debate was pitting women against other women. Don't let Maya's petite nature fool you. What followed was a rather long email chain between Maya and the woman on the other end of the chain, where Maya explained how this debate was anything but that, and to all intents and purposes ended up winning the argument. It's honestly such a pleasure to be debating with her tonight, and I hope that along with tonight's other speakers, we can show you exactly why this debate is so important to be had. Sophia Cannon is an English barrister of Caribbean parentage, a single mother to mixed-race, mixed-sex twins, specialising in family law, dedicated to child protection, having gone through the care system herself. Whilst the prospect of being on the opposing side to a barrister worries me somewhat, I'm really looking forward to hearing what she has to say tonight as a minority woman herself. And finally, we have Judy Cheng Hopkins. After a career of 36 years at the UN, where she was named by Forbes as one of the top 10 most powerful women in the UN, Ms. Cheng Hopkins is currently adjunct professor at Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs. Her UN career has covered diverse fields of work, including development, humanitarian work, refugees, and peace building. It is indeed an incredible honour for her to be joining us tonight. This debate is a first for union history. I'm incredibly honoured to be joining a lineup wholly made up of minority female speakers. Mr. President, these are your speakers, and they are certainly most welcome. Arundhati Roy once said, "There is no such thing as the voiceless, only the deliberately silenced, and the preferably unheard." When it comes to alternative conceptions of feminism, the feminist movement has been painfully resistant to including alternative minority voices. Straight, white, middle-class culture continues to dominate the narrative in all fields and renders alternative points of view as quaint contributions permitted to confirm the supposed eternal truth of Western supremacy. Minority women's voices are overridden, not only by straight, white, middle-class narrative, but straight, white, middle-class privilege. And this is where intersectionality comes into play. I can't begin to tell you the amount of people here in Oxford who've told me that they don't know what that word means. So let's define it in the simplest of terms. Intersectionality originated as a word from Kimberly Crenshaw's work of 1989, where she analysed the struggles of African-American women as they faced oppression on two fronts. One, for being a woman, and two, for being black. These two facets intersected in causing a unique and doubly pressing form of oppression that permeates the lives of black women living in predominantly white patriarchal society. Today, intersectionality is also about inclusive feminism. It is inclusive because it recognises that whilst the feminist movement is made up of millions of women trying to fight the patriarchy and beyond, not all those women experience the same levels of discrimination. It's about remembering that whilst women in the United States are fighting against the censorship of the female body in the media, women in the Middle East are fighting for the basic right to travel without the consent of a male relative. I have never denied my own privilege, that of class, ability, and education. In fact, I'm very aware of the fact that I'm only able to speak here today because of that very privilege. And yet, during my first week here in Oxford, a male acquaintance I'd made told me that I'd done well to get here. I mean, what does that even mean? Had I succeeded because I'm a girl? Probably unlikely, unless the person thought that we were still in the 20th century. It's more likely that he was referring to the fact that I'm a woman of colour who grew up in the North. I'm not looking for sympathy, and neither are my counterparts. We're looking for acknowledgement and understanding. If you're white, able-bodied, cisgender, a white, able-bodied, cisgender, heterosexual female, and your friend who is not all of those things comes to you and expresses a concern, just stop talking and listen. Don't say, "I'm so sorry." Say, "I hear your concerns and I will do whatever I have in my power to help you." Acknowledge your privilege. We are not being divisive. We are simply fighting to be heard. A cursory Google search of prominent white feminists leads to lists that are predominantly and overwhelmingly white. The only women of colour who are mentioned are mainstream black women like Oprah and Maya Angelou. If you don't cover minority women, your coverage is false, misleading, and dishonest. Don't get me wrong here. I don't think that every white woman is a white feminist, and to say so would be to denigrate the many years of hard work of past feminists and to essentialise individuals by reducing them into the depths of the worst forms of identity politics. And this isn't about identity, this is about reality. Whether you like it or not, we are simply telling you how it is. This is our life, these are our experiences, these experiences are real. Leaving celebrity culture aside, let's think about career role models. I am, of course, an economics and management student. While some argue that we're making progress because more than 25% of FTSE 100 boards are now have women, there are still twice as many men named John who are CEOs or chairmen of FTSE 100 companies as there are women of all names. But what's even more shocking is that out of the 7 FTSE 100 CEOs that are women, not a single one is an ethnic minority or identifies as LGBTQIA+. When I was younger, I'd often joke that I wanted to be Prime Minister one day. I'd be lying if I said that it wasn't disheartening to hear people constantly telling me that to make it to the top spot as a woman of colour, let alone a woman of colour, was incredibly, incredibly rare. I'm not saying that we don't have role models at all. In fact, I'd just like to take a moment to thank my mother, a first-generation immigrant who's also a successful doctor and mother of 2. She's been a constant support to me and has been one of the few people who's told me that the sky is the limit. But whilst on a personal level, my mother's a great inspiration, she would never become a role model deemed acceptable or worthy enough to be adopted by the most vocal and dominant voices in contemporary feminism. If you're going to remember one thing from my speech tonight, let it be this. White women do not own feminism. Western women do not own feminism. Women throughout the world, and for most of history, especially minority women, have had to be their own heroines. And this will continue to be the case. But a space at the table for such women to hear their stories has been long overdue. And this is something we can all partake in. That is empowerment, and that is the only way that change is going to happen. But for now, it remains that we are let down. We are disregarded. Society needs to address the fact that Western feminist movements are exclusive and exclusionary if we are to move forward. All I can hope is that one day, if I am lucky enough to have a daughter, she need not struggle with her cultural identity like me. Or if she does, she'll be surrounded by brave, courageous women who listen to her and empower her. I hope I'll be able to point to role models within feminist movements that she can feel a connection with and aspire to be like. I hope the feminism and feminist movements she will know and identify with will be truly intersectional. I'd like to end with a section from Maya Angelou's Still I Rise. Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Thank you.